I froze the moment I saw it. A bright orange slip, fluttering beneath my windshield wiper like a neon flag of war. At first, I thought it had to be a mistake. Maybe some city worker left it by accident. But when I leaned closer, the words hit me like a punch. Notice of violation, unauthorized parking, my own driveway, my own car, and a fine of $250 staring back at me in bold letters. I laughed out loud, but it wasn't the kind of laugh that comes from something funny. It was the kind that happens when you're too angry to process what's happening. My dog barked from inside the house, as if sensing the storm about to roll in. That's when I heard the voice, sharp, clipped, and smug. You can't just park wherever you want, you know. I turned, and there she was. Karen. Not just any neighbor, but the self-appointed queen of the HOA. She stood on the sidewalk, like a guard at the gates. Arms crossed, lips pinched tight, a clipboard clutched in her hands as though it were a sword. Wherever I want, I said, gesturing at the concrete beneath my tires. This is my driveway. Karen didn't blink. Our HOA has clear regulations. Driveways must remain clear for safety. Emergency access. You signed the agreement when you moved in. I didn't remember signing anything like that. And besides, what kind of emergency vehicle needed my 5-foot stretch of concrete? Still, she smiled as though she'd already won. If you don't pay the fine within 7 days, additional penalties will apply. Her heels clicked against the pavement as she walked away, leaving me with the ticket fluttering in the breeze. I stood there, heat rising in my chest. This wasn't about safety. This wasn't about regulations. This was about control. Karen had been circling my house like a hawk for months, complaining about my lawn length, about the color of my mailbox, even about my recycling bins. But this was the boldest move yet. Inside, I tossed the slip onto the counter and paced. Was this really happening? Could she actually fine me for parking in my own driveway? The thought of writing a check for something so ridiculous felt like admitting defeat. But I also knew Karen. She thrived on confrontation. If I pushed back, she'd push harder. And yet, staring out the window at my car, I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't backing down this time. This wasn't just about a fine. It was about standing up for myself and putting Karen in her place once and for all. The next morning, I marched down to the HOA office, the ticket crumpled in my hand. The building sat at the edge of our neighborhood, a beige brick box that felt less like a community hub and more like a fortress. Inside, the air smelled faintly of coffee and toner. A receptionist looked up, her expression already weary, as if she'd seen 100 people like me before. I need to talk to whoever signed this, I said, slapping the ticket on the counter. Her eyes flicked down. A smile tugged at her lips. That would be Miss Karen. Of course. Moments later, Karen herself appeared, clipboard in hand as if she slept with it by her pillow. She didn't seem surprised to see me. In fact, she looked almost pleased. Mr. Hayes, she said, voice dripping with false warmth. Here to resolve your violation? Resolve? I leaned forward. You slapped me with a $250 fine for parking in my own driveway. That's not a violation, that's harassment. Karen's smile didn't falter. Section 14. Paragraph 3 of the HOA regulation states that all driveways must remain clear for safety access. It's right there in the handbook you received when you moved in. I read that handbook, I shot back. It said driveways can't be blocked by boats or abandoned. Cars, not my own car for one night. Interpretation matters, Karen said smoothly, tapping her pen against the clipboard. And I interpret it strictly. My blood boiled. So you can just twist the rules however you like? She met my gaze without flinching. That's what leadership is for. Behind us, the receptionist pretended to shuffle papers. But I caught the smirk on her face. Clearly, Karen had pulled this stunt before. Here's what's going to happen, I said, forcing my voice to steady. I'm not paying your fine. I parked in my driveway. And unless you can show me actual law, not your imagination, I'm ignoring this. Karen's eyes narrowed, the smile finally cracking. Then penalties will escalate. You'll face liens, collections, maybe even property seizure. The words hung heavy in the air. She wanted me scared. She wanted me broken down. But instead, I felt something else. Clarity. I straightened. Then I'll fight you. In court if I have to. For the first time, Karen blinked. Just once. But it was enough to tell me I'd rattled her. Good luck with that, she muttered, retreating into her office. I left the HOA building with the ticket still in my pocket. My resolve hardened. Karen thought she could bully me into submission. But she had no idea what kind of fight she'd just started. The days that followed were anything but quiet. Karen didn't waste time. By the second morning, another notice appeared in my mailbox, this one threatening to double the fine. By the end of the week, I had 3 separate letters taped to my front door, each more aggressive than the last. But something interesting started happening. My neighbors began to notice. Hey man, called Derek from across the street one evening as I carried groceries inside. Karen giving you grief about your driveway? I hesitated, then nodded. She says it's a violation. Derek laughed bitterly. She tried the same thing on me last year. Said my truck was too close to the sidewalk. I paid just to shut her up, but I knew it was nonsense. Soon, more whispers reached me. A woman walking her dog muttered, "She fined me for my trash cans being visible for 5 minutes." Another neighbor admitted he'd been charged because his son's basketball hoop leaned against their garage. It hit me then. This wasn't just about me. Karen had built her little empire on fear, nickel and diming the whole neighborhood into silence. The final spark came one Saturday afternoon. I found my car egged. The shells cracked against my windshield, yolk dripping down the glass. I knew immediately it wasn't kids. A note sat under the wiper, written in bold, confident handwriting. "Pay your fine. Stop causing trouble." That was it. Karen had crossed a line. I wiped the mess off and grabbed my phone. If she thought intimidation would work, she was dead wrong. I started documenting everything, the tickets, the letters, even the egg-stained windshield. My plan was simple: build a record, piece by piece, until I had enough evidence to dismantle her case entirely. That night I called a meeting, not at the HOA office, but in my own garage. I texted Derek, knocked on doors, quietly spread the word. By 7 p.m., a dozen neighbors stood in a semicircle around my workbench. "Karen's been bullying me," I began, holding up the stack of fines. "But I know I'm not the only one." Heads nodded. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Frustration filled the room like static. "She thrives because we all think we're alone," I said. "But we're not. If we stand together, we can stop her." For the first time, I saw hope flicker in their eyes. Karen had started a war, but she'd underestimated just how many soldiers she'd created. The following week felt like the calm before a storm. Karen must have noticed neighbors gathering in my garage, because her behavior turned sharper, more desperate. Letters arrived daily, now written in bold red ink. She even started walking past my house at night, scribbling notes on her clipboard like she was cataloging crimes only she could see. But she wasn't ready for what came next. We launched our plan on a warm Thursday evening. Derek, ever the organizer, spread word quietly. Every homeowner who had been fined unfairly should bring their notices to my place. By sundown, stacks of envelopes, printouts, and photos covered my workbench. Some fines were for absurd things. A garden hose left out for an hour, a child's chalk drawings on the driveway, even a bird feeder that attracted squirrels. The evidence was staggering. And it was all in writing. "Karen thinks she can hide behind the handbook," I said, spreading the papers wide. "But she's twisting rules, not enforcing them. And we're going to prove it." We drafted a letter of our own, signed by 23 homeowners. The message was clear. The fines were illegitimate, and until the HOA board addressed Karen's abuse of power, no one would pay another cent. Delivering it was another matter. I volunteered. The next morning, I walked into the HOA office, the signed letter in my hand. Karen was waiting, as if she somehow knew I'd show up. "Back again?" she sneered. "Ready to pay what you owe?" "Not exactly." I set the packet on her desk. "This is from the neighborhood. Every one of us is done playing your game." Her eyes flicked over the signatures, and for the first time, real panic flashed across her face. "You think this means anything? The board backs me. Then the board will see what you've been doing. Every bogus fine. Every threat. Every rule you twisted to suit yourself." Her knuckles whitened around her pen. "You're making a mistake, Mr. Hayes." I leaned closer. "The mistake was yours, thinking no one would stand up to you." When I left, Karen's office door slammed hard enough to rattle the frame. But it was too late. The tide had turned. That night, neighbors gathered again, this time buzzing with excitement. For once, Karen wasn't in control. We were. Still, I knew this wasn't over. People like Karen don't surrender quietly. And I had the sinking feeling she'd be preparing her biggest move yet. It didn't take long for Karen to strike back. 3 days after we delivered the neighborhood's letter, I woke up to find a certified envelope taped to my door. Inside was the boldest threat yet. "Final notice, property lien pending." She was really going to try it, claiming she had authority to seize my home over a parking fine. I held the paper, my hands shaking, not with fear, but with disbelief. Karen had finally overplayed her hand. I wasn't the only one who thought so. Derek had already spoken to a lawyer, and that evening, the attorney joined us in my garage. He flipped through the stack of notices, shaking his head with each page. "These fines aren't enforceable," he said plainly. "HOAs have power, but not unlimited power. She's crossed the line into intimidation and fraud." The room erupted in murmurs. Hope turned into resolve. For the first time, we weren't just fighting back. We had the law on our side. The next HOA meeting was standing room only. Karen sat at the head table, clipboard clutched like a shield, her eyes darting nervously as neighbors filed in. When it was my turn to speak, I stood, holding the certified notice high for everyone to see. "This," I said, my voice carrying through the hall, "is what your president thinks she can do. Threaten to seize homes, extort families, twist the rules to fill her pockets." Gasps echoed. Derek stepped forward with the lawyer, who calmly explained every violation Karen had committed. One by one, neighbors came forward, sharing their own stories. By the end, Karen's face was pale, her grip on the clipboard trembling. Finally, the lawyer delivered the finishing blow. If this board does not take action immediately, we will file a formal complaint with the state and pursue legal damages. Silence hung heavy. Then, the chairman of the HOA board turned to Karen. You've gone too far. Effective immediately, you are removed from your position. The room erupted in applause. Karen sputtered, protesting, but the sound was drowned out by cheers. Her reign was over. In the weeks that followed, the neighborhood felt lighter. Kids played basketball in driveways again. Garden hoses lay stretched across lawns, and cars sat parked exactly where they belonged. My driveway never looked so good. I kept the original $250 ticket, framed on my garage wall, not as a reminder of Karen's power, but of the day we took it back. Because sometimes, standing up to one person means freeing an entire community. And all it took was refusing to pay a fine that never should have existed.